Oscar Blue Ramirez, who's always in harm's way and now is down in southern Mexico today. Put in perspective the invasion of the United States of America as you've seen it through the whole year of 2023.
This was not happening under the Trump administration because Donald Trump did not give the power to the United Nations. Immediately when Joe Biden came in, Steve, he was a collaborator of the Global Compact on Migration, and that basically opened the door and the floodgates for people to come in through non-ports of entry, to be arriving through non-ports of entry. In the meantime, that the United States of America and other countries are involved in this globalist agreement of this humanitarian idea that it will create a better atmosphere for migrants, you will have these kind of problems and this kind of situations at every border. It doesn't even matter how large the wall is going to be built. As long as we keep the priority out, we need to keep the priority out. That is the United Nations, and the United States needs to pull out immediately from the Global Compact on Migration as soon as Donald Trump steps into office, and push Mexico to do exactly the same. And that way it will completely do a domino effect, as he was doing strategically and smart with the tariff that he was putting on Mexico to tariff them under the automobile industry, avocado, and beer. And that completely shut down the massive influx that was coming in from Guatemala. And then ultimately Guatemala was going to do exactly the same and the same and the same. Even the Panamanian authorities and the Darien Gap, they said when Mexico was applied with the tariff, that completely slowed down, and it completely slowed down in the borders with the United States. As you see, migrants are walking behind me again, Steve, for the 11th caravan that we have covered with the War Room in the south border of Mexico, Steve.
Oscar, just get people up to speed. This global compact, which is really essentially a treaty, never went through the Senate. Biden just kind of signed on at the beginning of his regime. Walk us through why it's so deadly to the United States of America, or any nation that wants to declare and have its own sovereignty.
Well, basically, the United Nations created this idea of open borders, but doing it in a humanitarian way. And 140 countries signed it first. This global compact tells you that every migrant that enters through a non-port of entry or through a port of entry needs to be attended and needs to be given education, job, everything that they need in the comfort to stay. But this, also says that the migration needs to be done in an orderly fashion, documented peacefully, and with a purpose that is completely the opposite of what the United Nations has done. If you pull out of this, you will also cut the funding to the NGOs that they're part of this enormous problem, that they're aiding and abating this to continue to every border. NGOs from the United States of America, that they are funded by the Biden administration, and the billions that they are funded, they're part of this global problem. And then, the cartel knows that the cartel is growing massively with billions of dollars. What the Biden administration has done is created wars on the other side of Mexico, where the wall is not built. They're fighting over it, Steve. They're fighting for these open border gaps because they know that extra continental migrants are paying between $25,000 to $30,000 to $35,000 to get all the way to the border. And an average migrant is paying $2,500 to $4,000. Talking about these numbers in a high scale, talking about millions of people. You're talking about high numbers of quantities of money. So this is the reason why the Global Compact needs to be dismantled, disabled, and disappeared and eradicated from every country and every border.
I want to go back to the NGOs for a second as being a absolutely inextricably linked part of making this operate. You've covered with Burquam, I think it's Panama, where the NGOs, the old military bases are now taken over by the NGOs. What NGOs are you talking about? You got the United, but talk to us about and name a couple, because I think a lot of people naively are still giving money to people or are not putting pressure on their reps to cut the funding to the NGOs in this budget process. So walk us through their key part of it and where the funding comes from.
Well, the funding comes from and sadly, I'm going to say this to the United States people: it comes from your taxpayer. It comes from you. And some of the and the most important NGOs are the Catholic charities. They use the Catholic Church as as a frame and as a smokescreen to drag people and to donate a lot of this humongous money. Also, the ACLU is part of this, humongous problem of bringing people, the ACLU, just to put attention to people and to what they have done. Donald Trump wanted to stop child trafficking and wanted to put, DNA testing in our borders because of the enormous fake families that they were coming in. Just to remember everybody, in the year 2018, there were more than 58 fake families that they were detected because Donald Trump was really strict on the borders. When he was trying to do the DNA testing, the ACLU immediately stepped in and hardly was attacking Donald Trump. All these NGOs that they are working on, not only in the borders with the United States, they're spreading the information on how to cheat on the system. That is the number one thing. They're educating the migrant to say, you know what, I can enter to a non-port of entry and I can stay there and I can possibly make it and I can possibly don't. I'm going to be released immediately and I'm not going to be released, but they're willing to risk that. Steve, that is the problem, that they already found a loophole, that humongous loophole through social media, through applications like TikTok, where the cartel works continuously. These No More Deaths, it's another NGO that works on the desert in Arizona, that they're in cahoots with the cartel and everybody knows it. All these NGOs, they need to be eradicated. Also, stop the funding to these people, and you will see that the problem will be cleared immediately.
Oscar Blue Ramirez, you put yourself in harm's way in 2023. What's your wrap up for the year and your warning to the folks in this audience?
Well, Steve, I just talked to my brother, Ben Berquano, a couple of days ago, and it was really sad to talk to him in a way that he said, we're really close, Oscar, to lose our country. And it is not only at the borders, it is because they've forgotten, that the Constitution of the United States of America was first God and liberty and freedom. And as a foreigner to your country, Steve, I can tell you that is the number one thing that Americans are forgetting, that the Constitution says about God, freedom, and respect for law and order. And those are the founding things that the United States was built upon. And you can see that the actual administration of the United States of America does not care about those foundations and those things that they are so important to represent the United States around. But it's just a lot of Americans had told me as a foreigner, the Mexico is corrupt. Mexico has a lot of corruption and has a lot of corrupt politicians. And right now, sadly, I can say, how far are the politicians from the United States corruptibly almost exactly the same or worse than the ones in Mexico? Because they know what is happening at your borders. They know what is actually continuously going on at the borders. Millions of people. We talked about this, Steve. One day we were talking about quantities of people not too far along with initiation of the year, and we were talking about 2 million, 1 million. Now we are estimating on 10 million. It is just impossible for a country to sustain this. It is just unbelievable to sustain it. And for what Todd Bensman was telling about the year 2024, I believe that it's going to be double the influx. It is going to be worse than 2023. Already, Steve, just for you to let you know, Central and South American authorities are already preparing because they know that election year is going to be the next 2024. And already preparing in the Darien Gap, they're already preparing in Central and South America how they're going to combat the organized crime, how they are going to try to slow down the pace. What the Biden administration has done to the continent of America and the world is just the idea that there's no border, there's no country, and you don't deserve a border, and there's no need for a border, there's no need for border security. And that's the worst thing about it, that I see Americans right now that they're really comfortable. I see Republicans that they're not doing anything, absolutely anything for their country. And one day, Steve, you will, sadly, one American, I don't want that to happen because I love the United States of America. They're going to be standing on the other side where I'm standing and be admiring the country like it is the United States. And you will be saying, oh, that's a beautiful country. And I will tell you, you had it and you let it go. You had it and you let it go.